Jolly good. We're ready to roll, Paul. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Cabinet meeting, June 2023. Apologies for absence. I think we are all present, so no Cabinet apologies. Does any member of the Cabinet wish to register a declaration of interest on any item on the agenda? No, all clear. Thank you very much. We have some minutes which are of our last meeting, which was the 11th of April at 6 o'clock. Has everybody had a chance to have a look at those minutes? Does anybody have any query? Thank you, Phil. Is that agreed? Thank you. Okay, that's great. I have no particular announcements to make this evening. Not been notified of any urgent business. This evening, I think I'm right in saying we have no reports from Overview and the Scrutiny Committees. In which case, let's get into our first report, which is the quarterly performance. So this is the last quarter of last year up to March. I'll just make a few observations, then I think some of the Cabinet members may want to add some comments of their own from their own areas. There is an overall direction of travel in improved scores on this. Obviously, the end of the year means it's an opportunity for a refresh, and there'll be some new indicators coming in, some of which the Cabinet will mention. There's some in Matt's area, for example, he's going to cover, and some that we might drop off. Always reluctant to drop them off because we need to measure, but for example, some of the COVID ones may no longer be so appropriate to us. You'll notice it's on page 20 of the pack. For those of you who have the pack, fly tips cleared, that's still a massive number, huge cost, and sadly that number is still growing. A lot of work going on to deal with that problem. Other things to highlight. I noticed on page 23, the proportion of people aged between 16 and 18 who are not in employment, education or training is in a really good position at 2%, some seasonal impact to that. There's some future targets coming along for 23-24, metric for school exclusions, admissions, awaiting school places, around the EHPC process and so on. I think are going to be included. Fiona might mention those for next year. Maybe that people want to ask about page 24, net disabled facilities grant expenditure. This is not an overspend, although it gives that impression. This is actually catching up on a historical underspend, some of which carries over from COVID. Page 25, these are some of the stats that won't be reported. The last two there, COVID booster related, will not be reported in the 23-24 figures. On page 28, we're dealing with planning. I know Adam's going to speak a little about the council houses built and some of the viability issues. In total, though, the affordable homes completed in the area did hit the target. That there'll be some more planning KPIs starting for this coming year as well. Rebecca may reference those, but we think there's more to be done on the measurement of planning performance, so that will be coming. Yeah, okay. Now, visits to libraries on page 29. Visits to libraries are ahead of target. It's good. But what we'll also be doing is separating out those who visit physically to a library, whereas as opposed to those who use the virtual library services. We think it's important to register that. That will be starting from now on. Visits to museums on page 30 is looking pretty good as well. Apprentices employed in substantive roles. Some, of course, are completing, that's on page 30. Some are completing their courses, which therefore means they drop off as being an apprentice as such, but likely remain in our employment. And we've added here, previously there was a question about what the nature of those apprentices were. So on the bottom of page 30, you've got a commentary box and you'll see the second paragraph. At the end of March, West Northamptonshire Council had 88 apprentices employed within the authority. 5 times level 2, 34 times level 3, 11 times level 4, and so on. We previously requested the data for the breakdown of the nature of those apprenticeships. Okay. With the, somebody may ask on the finances on page 32, net revenue budget delivery. We can tell you what those numbers are. At the time of going to print here, certainly we were yet to finalise the year-end figures for the further work that needs to be done to do that. Malcolm may want to comment further. I think
we'll do that now, Chair, did you say?
Well,
do you want to do that now?
Yeah, I think largely those were the ones I wanted to pick out. On page 34, there's some stuff ahead of target. Housing benefit average days to determine a change in circumstances is ahead of target. Challenges around average days to determine a new application. That's improving, and there is an action plan in for that. Shall we start clarifying some of these? Malcolm, by all means, if you wanted to come back in there on that end of year budget as a start, or any others you wanted to clarify.
Well, the big news is the year end, of course, as we all know, and that's there's a few ups and downs have gone on the last few months, as you would expect, and there may be some minor ones yet to come. But we're going to stick with the figure of 302,000 overspend. Now that's, when you're talking about the budgets to scale we've got, that's really in the rounding error almost. But we've also carried forward some items that requested the various directorates that's slightly in excess of 300,000. So you can pick any number between those, but we'll be settling on 302. And that's so we've effectively balanced the books this last year, despite considerable pressures from children and adults, as you know all very well aware. Into the next financial year, and we're looking at the first quarter, and we've had a few bumps come out yet, so we might have a difficult year ahead of us. But yet to be seen. But I'll comment on that later. One item on here is I think that's probably all you need to say there, Chair, because that's the important number today.
Thanks, Malcolm. And having then made that figure sort of more publicly known, it's a great opportunity to thank everybody involved, yourself, Malcolm, and of course, Martin as head of finance. A lot of people in the finance team, but actually, I don't think there's hardly anybody within the organisation who hasn't made a contribution to this, whether they are directors and assistant directors that have worked hard to keep us on track. It's quite a remarkable achievement to, in all but a spit, hit the budget. It really is. And to every member of staff who's had to come to a panel on Friday to prove the spending that they've had to do and so on, and the culture change that's brought, we're extremely grateful on behalf of the Cabinet. We thank everybody involved. Adam, did you want to clarify something on housing numbers, I think?
Yeah, I'll cover off a few of the areas in my portfolio that the report highlights. It's very pleasing to see that visitors to leisure centres continue to exceed targets by some distance. It's particularly important in the current climate, given the financial pressures on leisure centres with the cost of their energy bills, particularly those who are providing swimming pools to the general public. They've been under immense pressure, but with the help of our leisure team and some financial support and negotiation as well, we as a local authority have been able to help several of our leisure centres through difficult times. Equally, it's pleasing to see that library visits were well above target. The library service continues to run really well, and also that the museums in Northampton exceeded their annual target by around 1%. So we'll continue to give support to the museums and look at ways that we can make them more attractive, more efficient, and continue to drive revenue from visitors who are going into the museums. But always, in my view, with the access to the museum being free of charge. It's that secondary spend that will really be targeting. On the housing front, we've got a delivery of some margin below the quarterly target, but a significant number of properties which are nearing completion, 87 as identified in the report, are nearing completion. It's also really comforting to see that with the arrival of the new chief executive at MPH, there's a renewed enthusiasm and commitment to ramping up that delivery of social housing, not only in Northampton but across West Northamptonshire. And MPH and now Northamptonshire Partnership Homes as opposed to Northampton Partnership Homes. They have a green light to build wherever they feel that there is a need in West Northamptonshire, so long as the viability of the individual scheme stacks up. We also work strategically with our registered providers, housing associations, to make sure that any competition for sites is minimised, and so that we're getting best value for our affordable housing across the district. And we'll continue to take that approach. So whilst the numbers of social housing are below target, the registered providers delivering affordable homes continue to exceed targets. And so but by hook or by crook, we're continuing to deliver affordable housing solutions at a reasonable rate, but still very conscious, Chairman, that we want to improve on that delivery of social housing, and we've got a number of mechanisms now in place with MPH and with the registered providers to deliver that aim, and I'm confident that we've got the strategy set, and it's now a case of working through the detail with those partners and enabling them to deliver on our behalf.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Adam. There's some interesting observations there, and absolutely our commitment to build homes is absolutely solid. And Phil, you wanted to highlight some things in your report?
Only a couple of aspects. First of all, I think the outcome of the Queen's Green Canopy has been absolutely fantastic, with 11,337 trees planted. But I just really wanted to refer to the matter of trees planted on WNC land, because we have been criticised in the past where we've been in the negative, and in actual fact in Q3 we had a negative figure of 146, whereas in this quarter we have a positive of 277. But just to confirm, for the whole year we actually have we have planted 115 more trees than we have actually lost. So we're still on the right side, planting more than we've lost. And I think we need to remember that trees, you know, we get bad weather, they become dangerous, residents have various issues, all sorts of different reasons that trees do come down. But I think to be in the positive over the year is a great achievement, and taken together with the 11,337, I think that's a good result, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, absolutely. Fiona, let's go to you next and then come to Matt.
I just wanted to highlight, which I'm sure everybody's aware of, that the figures for the Children's Trust are for the county, not just for West Northants, but there is work going on in the future that we would have our own figures so that we can actually see better what's happening in our district. These are currently the figures for the whole council, for the whole county. Just to talk about the NEAT area, which kind of touches on some things that we're just starting to work on, and that is getting work experience and work practice for some of those young people that we are in touch with that find those things difficult. And we have started a campaign today, which we will be announcing in the future in full, to work with some really big organisations in Northampton who have already agreed to take some of our young people for a day's work experience to see how that goes to start with. So I think this is a really brilliant initiative that we're starting, and I'm really hopeful that it's going to grow in the future. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. On that, so it's one of the revisions I didn't point out, but what we're planning to change, we will be able to do West only figures, Stuart or Fiona, for 23-24.
Thank you, Chair. So as we move forward with separate inspections through Ofsted, Ofsted will have an expectation that the Children's Trust data is split north and west. That will give us a greater ability to understand the experiences of children locally, and will bring more relevance to the scorecard that we have in place.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. Matt, a couple of points.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a bit of context around some of the adult social care measures that we often see on these scorecards, and the performance is generally okay. But coming down the line, we've got the CQC inspection framework, which formally kicks off in August, and I've met with Stuart and the business intelligence team that work on these numbers all the time, and really to get underneath what we need to be discussing publicly and what we need to make available in the public domain to sit alongside the sort of thing that the CQC will be looking at and measuring us and challenging us on. So it may well be that we change some of these to align ourselves with that you know, in the future, and that will be I think a good, somewhat, some of it will be challenging because we need to be as transparent and align ourselves with what we need to be talking about and displaying, but that should be coming down the line. And but we've got I had a really good session with that team, and we've got some really good people working on that data all the time. So I hope we should align ourselves up pretty well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. Just to report that in line with the improving performance in the planning department, we will be in future reporting on the success rate against national targets in planning in both major and householders. And certainly overall, it really is a dramatically improving picture for current applications. There is still some overhang to be caught up on, but overall the picture is looking remarkably better. Thank you.
That's good to hear. Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, if there's no other observations from Cabinet, we'll go to our speakers. Let's see, we have 5 speakers in this order. First of all, Councillor Purser, Bob, over to you. Then we've got Councillor Holland-Delamere, Councillor Randall, Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Beardsworth.
Thank you. Just wanted to pick up some issues that I saw across the reports. I just welcome the report again on the museums. I think if people have been to the recent, and I hope we've all been to see the exhibitions in the museum in the last month, because the portraiture was excellent. The Ukrainian art, I think it is a credit to the town council for getting that exhibition in there and for displaying it. I think that's excellent. We've got the BFG exhibition, which is excellent, and as is the university exhibition. So I think they're all really good things. I think all of us as councillors should be there. I think our staff should be there, and I think the wider town should get to learn what an excellent facility we've got there, and what they're really good exhibitions. So I commend to everyone. So that's one thing. Housing, I think we just have to keep, and I don't think Councillor Brown should be too seduced by the the article today, which commended his work. But you know, I think we've got to really keep on. How do we increase the number of how do we get this pipeline in place? And we've got to continue to work at that. And I think, you know, we're not there yet, but we've got to get there. And we've got to work with MPH. We've got to work out the finance. Malcolm has got to find solutions to this, and we've got to get there. So that, I think the affordable housing, although the figures look good, when you sit at planning committee, developers are arguing us down all the time, and we've got to take a stand on this and produce housing that is truly affordable to the people in West Northamptonshire, and the kind of it's got to be related to the economy that we've got in this area. And our houses are expensive and our jobs pay poorly in some sectors. So we've got to find a way around that as an authority. I'd like to see some figures. I'm concerned about the absence rates from our secondary schools and our exclusions from schools. This is coming up in our N4 group. We're looking at it, but I wonder if we really ought to be monitoring that very carefully, because I think post-COVID, we've got a lot of problems there, and they relate to all the discussions that we're having widely. So I'm concerned about that, because education is our children's future. You get one chance to educate, well, you don't, but you've got to, education is absolutely vital to be. We went to the briefing on council, the red light is on. One point, excellent briefing last week from officers on Councillor Larratt's portfolio, really concerned about the number of vacant posts there. That's an area that we've really got to got to get people into those posts because they're the people delivering the kind of developments that we need in our area. I've had more than my time.
Oh, well done, Mo. It's some great comments, Bob, and thank you for what you said about the museum. We conceive of the idea as being something not that's where you go once every 2 or 3 years, but go regularly. And as you absolutely say, there's some fantastic stuff going on there, including collaboration with the town council. I think on the vacancies, yeah, I'm equally concerned, and we know we have got vacancies we need to fill, but we also know we've got a new structure as well, which had more positions, some of which are now being advertised for the first time. But no, that struck me too. And we know that everybody in highways in those areas are working incredibly hard. Did you want to comment quickly there, Stuart? But please feel free to.
Just to give assurance that we're following a project management approach on that. So we are now tracking every single vacancy in all of the place area in terms of where the vacancy is in terms of the process, and we can therefore identify any particular issues that have been risen, whether that be in the recruitment or whether it be in the number of people coming forward in terms of coming forward for the posts, etc. So again, got a grip of that now, and we'll follow that through on a consistent basis. So any one point we'll know exactly where we're at with any of the jobs that we're talking about, accept the concern, hence why we put this in place to actually give it the push. And I'm confident we'll get results and quick results as a result of that.
Thanks, Stuart. 2 or 3 people coming in this order. Adam, we'll do make some comments. Malcolm, and then Stuart. Adam.
Yeah, I can reassure Bob, I'm not about to print out the article, pop it in my scrapbook and declare the job done. Pleasant reading though it was. We absolutely recognise the need to carry on working, and with Malcolm's assistance, we've now nailed down the financial model that we believe we need to accurately assess the viability of projects and to enable us to borrow responsibly but consistently to deliver the social housing that's needed across West Northamptonshire. Bang on about needing the right housing mix. That forms a key part of the housing strategy, and we'll work with partners to ensure that we get as close to that housing mix as possible. On the percentage of affordable housing, absolutely, planning permission gets passed. There's always a degree of negotiation with developers, but I don't know if you were able, Bob, to attend the briefing on planning and housing and how the two areas intersect. I thought officers gave a really illuminating briefing on just how effective they have been in negotiating developers back up to a more reasonable level of affordable housing, or certainly far more than the starting point that developers started at. That approach needs to continue. We need to squeeze every last affordable dwelling out of those developers, and officers have my full support in that regard. But the housing, social housing, the job's never done. We're not going to rest. As long as there's a housing waiting list, then we'll keep plugging away.
Thanks, Adam. Malcolm, you're going to comment? Bob's
very
stimulated some good discussion here, Bob.
Very briefly, because Adam's covered the point. We have a cunning plan, Bob, and as you may recall, we explained the situation to you some months ago now, a couple of months ago. Very welcome for you to pop along, and we'll run you through the proposals, because they're not public yet. So, but I'll be very keen to see what you've made of them.
Thanks, Malcolm. Finally, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm that through the LAP work, we have seen that there's been an increase around exclusions and suspensions in secondary schools. What I can say is the work in the LAPs has created a bit of a call to arms. So in M4, we've got a bit of a task force being taken forward by our Assistant Director for Education, Ben Pearson. That's pulling together the head teachers, the police, fire service, police fire crime commissioner, on the basis that we need to really start to reduce that number of people coming through. Thank you.
Jolly good, Bob. Thank you very much indeed. Keith, welcome.
Just like to thank Martin Henry for the briefing that he gave to Jonathan himself on finances. Good to see, but recognise there's a lot of challenges, and you've got a big task, I recognise, Malcolm, to really balance the books for more the consistent challenges. Just looking at the corporate plan, just a concern about NEET transport, 16 to 18s. We've got the homes to school transport consultation that's just closed, and what we're hearing about the potential increase in the cost of the passes for the schools. When you look at the comparison to the urban centres where there is a better public transport provision, I can point out the cost, for example, for 11 months, an Uno bus pass would be £396. For a stagecoach one for 11 months, it would be 630. If potentially we're looking at £1,000 for rural kids, that is quite a disparity, and especially for poorer families in those areas. What I really want to point out is we need to really watch this number, because at the moment we're below the level, but if we find there's an increase in the inability of kids to get to school or college, etc., we might see a pressure on that number, and those decisions that we make in one area could have an impact on other areas. And those ones are concerns. We recognise that it's a policy that hasn't been investigated or sorted for 10 years. It's an inherited problem, but we've got to recognise that there's going to be a disparity of sometimes £300 or even more in what urban kids and rural kids are going to be spending on their transport. That's a comparison that we need to take into account.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Randall, Wendy. Did you want to come and respond there? Sorry for that. I
I
hadn't
was
seen you.
just going to say, Chair, that, you know, the consultation has just closed. We are taking it very seriously, but we are at the moment only looking up to school pupils up to the age of 16. We're not looking at post 16, so getting to college and things like that isn't necessarily an issue at this moment in time. And of course, that we do have a statutory responsibility to pay, and a cost that will be imposed, or the costs of increased cost, will be for those that don't qualify for free transport anyway. So, you know, let's be clear about where we are on this particular issue at the moment. But we'll have the outcome of the consultation, and we'll make decisions based on that.
Thank you. Wendy, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just coming back on Phil's point there, I thought that you get free transport to school if you live over 3 miles up until year 11. Now, when children have to stay in education until they're 18, that's when they need to start paying for it. And I thought that was where the increase was coming from. Is it not?
Just to clarify, Chair, there's 2 aspects to homeschool transport, up to and including the age of 16 and post 16. All we're looking at the moment is up to and including the age of 16. We will come on to look at the post 16 in due course. We haven't gone out to consultation on that as yet. So it's 2 aspects. We're looking at one, not all of it.
Right, thank you for clarifying that. Then at least that I know there's been a lot of concerned parents, but obviously they didn't think about it being under year 11 because they don't pay anyway. So that will just be a cost that will affect us on an increase and not parents then. Yeah, right. Okay, thank you. Clean and green, fly tips have increased, but penalty notices have decreased. Is there a reason why? So that's then on robust resource management. The debt that's owed to the authority for over 90 days has increased, and that now sits at 24.97 million. So that is a, concern for me, but may not be, because you may have a very good answer for that one. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you want to respond on that, Malcolm, or any of the comments?
Yes, well, you've got to read the stats, Wendy. If you look at it there, it is a higher number, but as a percentage, it's lower. Because it's based on 175 million worth of revenue as opposed to 113. So the actual stats I've got the numbers here, go from 17.6% down to 14.3. So oddly enough, it's an improvement, but you're dead right to point this out. It's always one of those things, particularly at year end, to decide what is really bad money, what's you're going to collect. And that's always a big debate at any year end. So a very important number, that. Thank you. Anyway, that's your answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Humphreys, Rosie, over to you.
Thank you very much. Just a few points. Just echoing Councillor Randall's question about the fixed penalty notices. She did ask for the reason. I was going to ask that too. So that's one of my queries. It's of concern that there's still underperformance on the referrals with a decision within 2 working days for children. In the information, recruitment of staff is a priority focus and additional staff has been agreed. I wonder how many staff and will that be enough to improve that target next quarter. Also of concern, the children who become subject of a child protection plan for a second time, that has not decreased. That stayed about the same as last quarter. But clearly things to be encouraged by in this report. The increase in older people who are still at home 91 days after discharge, and health visitor rates of babies, newborn babies. And echoing comments already made on visits to libraries, that's very encouraging. And yeah, it would be useful to know how many of those were virtual visits and how many in person, because when you look at the figure, one begins to think our life pre-pandemic is sort of really resuming with that number of visitors. But as I say, to distinguish between the two would be helpful. And echo comments already made about the importance of our museum in our cultural life and the life of our community, and very much echo Bob's encouragement that its riches are made known to the wider town and area, and will be even further enriched when the leather collection is finally transferred. So I would be interested to know what's happened to that. It seems to have gone to ground. So I think those are my points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Wendy. Points noted. Was there any points that anyone wants to respond on, David?
Just on the fixed penalty notices, it varies. If you look at the graph, you'll see that you get a variance, so we get seasonal variances and things like that.
Adam, were you going to comment on some of those points?
Yeah, far from going to ground, the transfer of the leather collection has been agreed. Both I and David Bauer of the Museum of Leathercraft were on the radio a couple of weeks ago heralding the news. So it's fantastically exciting. We're going to have a specialist part-time curator for the leather collection. It's not only going to complement the shoe collection that's currently in the museum, but there are elements of the collection that will be used as standalone exhibitions, and a fantastic collection of royal trunks and all sorts of different artifacts that are really exciting.
When's it actually happening?
So the first element of the display, I think we'll be able to start incorporating items later this year. There is a process to go through to actually transfer over the items from their current location. But as time goes on, we'll take bigger and bigger steps to make more of that collection, and especially when we in the years ahead, when we do move into phase 2 of the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery, there'll be a specialist home hopefully within that new phase of the museum to really make the most of that collection. But for the time being, the museum staff are starting to incorporate the leathercraft collection into the future plans for exhibitions. So watch the space.
Excellent.
It's exciting times.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker on this item, Councillor Beardsworth, Sally. Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, somebody else was going to respond on some of the other points. Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to provide Cabinet with a level of assurance that the indicator around referrals with a decision within 2 working days is an active priority for the Social Care Improvement Board, and to again provide assurance as detailed in the text that all referrals that are red rated are seen within 1 day. So all those really complex child protection referrals are seen within 1 day.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I hadn't spotted that you were coming in there. Sally, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let's start with the £302,000 overspend. And we were very lucky this year that we had the extra money from the business rates that helped us out. Will we be having that money next year? And has any money been taken out of contingency or reserves to prop up the budget? That's my first question.
Well, I'll answer the second one first, no.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and the three, sorry, the second question was, has anything taken out of contingency this year? And the answer is
Or
no.
reserved? Yeah.
Reserves, sorry, yeah. And the first question was, Sally, again?
The first question was, you were lucky this year because of the business rates, the extra money from the business rates. Was that correct, Martin?
Well, the business rates, the year's gone. We use that, of course, we use some of that, and we would always provision something in business rates. You never know what you're going to get almost to the last quarter. And historically, ever since I've been doing the books, we've always had a situation in the last quarter, business rates are brought in and we decide what to do with them.
Yes.
And that's always a bit of a debate, actually,
Okay,
quite an
so
interesting one.
you don't know from year to year whether you'll have that.
We've got business rates in this coming year, of course we have, yeah. Now,
Okay.
whether we utilise
Okay.
that or not, it depends entirely what happens to it at the year end. We won't even decide that till
Mhm.
probably February, something like that.
Right, my second question is about the priority improving life chances, with a portion of people 16 to 18 are not employed, educated, or NEETs, as we call them. I'm just concerned that this is quite high. And without training or without an education, people just won't be able to be qualified to get jobs. So what are we doing about that to minimize the number?
Okay, somebody want to respond on that one? Anyone wants comments? Stuart, you're going to comment on that one? Thank you, Sally.
Thanks, Sally.
Mm.
So the proportion of people aged 16 to 18 who are not employed, education or training, we're
Yeah.
currently at 2%.
Yeah,
We see a bit of a fluctuation in summer,
yeah.
obviously as children leave, but actually we're overperforming. Our target was 5.5%. So
Yeah.
actually we're doing quite well on the 2%. We've
yeah.
got to still have that strong aspiration that we don't have any children who are not in
Would be
education,
nice,
employment
yes.
or
Mm.
training,
Mm.
but the 2% isn't doing too bad at the moment.
It's not doing too bad, but it's too much that I would like to see with people at that stage. Because 2% doesn't sound a lot, but it equates to how many children. That's the whole point. The second thing is the school transport you've discussed. I didn't want to answer that again. And I did ask Stuart earlier that if people had to pay to the increase, if they were on benefit, would they be entitled? And he's going to find that out for me, whether that's the case, because we weren't quite sure at the time.
Well, it's still out for consultation, isn't it? I don't think that's a part of the existing policy, but maybe something similar will come as part of the consultation. Is that fair to say, Stuart, do you think? On the homeschool?
Sorry, Chair, the question related to those people who were outside of eligibility. So I
Yeah.
think Councillor Larratt has already clarified that the proposed changes are attributable to those families who are not eligible for free transport.
Yes. So that's fine, as long as I've got that clarified.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Okay.
Museums are pleased with museums, and I'm glad it's progressing, and when we get the new one open, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Highways. I don't know who plans highways, but they seem to sort of concentrate all on one area, and that you can't get your way around anything, to sort of get. Do they have a plan that they can actually send out to councillors so we know and we can tell the public what they're doing?
There is a plan that's only for this year that's only just been finalised,
Okay.
and it will be issued in the very near future to everybody, I believe. I've got a copy, but it hasn't actually gone out to everybody, same in the north. So had that meeting this afternoon.
It would be useful for councillors to have that, because if people ring us up, we can say, yes, this will be done and it'll be finished by this date. It's just information. And for Adam, just one quick question. We seem to have an awful more flats being built. They're great. Don't get me wrong. We need affordable flats, but we don't seem to have enough houses. And I'd like to see a better proportion of houses to flats, because flats are okay for starting families. But if you want to have 2 or 3 children, they're not the ideal place to bring up children.
So whilst I agree completely that we need the appropriate housing mix, NPH and registered providers do build an awful lot of houses, but the reality is that approximately a third of the people on the housing waiting list are awaiting one-bedroom accommodation, and flats is one of the most effective ways of delivering that. So flats will always form a key part of our housing mix, and actually they're a very effective way of building on brownfield land as well. So, you know, we're getting there, and I'll quite gladly try and distribute to members when we've got the data collated a more complete picture of the housing mix and how we're delivering against housing need, because I think that would be illuminating for people.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, let's move.
I think
on.
I've covered everything.
Thank you, Sally. I was just going to highlight to everybody, we're on where we're 5 minutes on many of those
Sorry, that's
speakers.
doing individual questions.
That
Sorry.
enables questions on any angle, of course, any aspect of the council, doesn't it? We've 50 minutes left of speakers registered. So we're going to urge speakers to be concise. And at that point, we'll move on to our next item, if we can, which is item 8, household support funds. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So I've got the pleasure tonight of introducing some really good reports, and this is the first of them, the Household Support Fund 4, and I'm going to thank Rosin Harris and the Public Health team for submitting this report. I think it's really thorough and really detailed, talks about our journey through the different tranches of the Household Support Fund so far, and gives a good detailed view of where we're looking to go. So this cabinet paper presents our plans for distributing the fourth tranche of the DWP's Household Support Fund. As part of Household Support Fund 4, WNC has been allocated 5.199 million to distribute between 1st of April this year and March 2024. We've refined these plans based on our learning from the evaluation of the previous 3 tranches of fund distributed over the last 2 financial years. The largest proportion of the fund will be targeted towards children living in poverty. As we know, the life chances and later life health outcomes of our future generation are significantly impacted by the effects of deprivation in childhood. A further third of the fund is allocated to other households who are also facing significant hardship, particularly those who are struggling but not eligible to receive the government's other cost of living payments. And we're also allocating funding to our voluntary sector organisations who directly support our residents in need. These will include funding dedicated to help residents move from emergency aid to more sustainable long-term solutions to hardship. The West Northamptonshire Anti-Poverty Strategy Oversight Group has had oversight of the distribution of the previous tranches of the Household Support Fund, as well as this one, and has received extremely positive feedback from a wide variety of partners on the culture of collaboration that has been developed through this work. This Household Support Fund distribution plan builds on the collaborative working and will take us one step further towards our anti-poverty strategy ambitions for West Northamptonshire. I'll just add as well that recognise that government actually listened to what was being said across the sector and have made this a year-long allocation. Also commend the work of the council and the collaboration that I mentioned with partners. That has been mentioned on a number of calls and things that I've been with, whether they're through the voluntary sector, you know, I think back over the journey through COVID and previous to that in our old authorities, I think our relationship with the voluntary sector is in a real good place. Yes, there's always challenges about how it's funded and that, but the way we're all coming together to work on this, work on things like the health integration agenda, it's really healthy. Talking with Stuart about how we move forward, you know, I think there's a recognition that we've done a lot of reactionary work, which has been good. It's been really good work, but our thinking now needs to move into thinking of these issues a bit more strategically and in a sustainable way. So we've already got some ideas on how we can look at work with maybe some business partners to make the whole sort of the anti-poverty work and this work a bit more sustainable. But really pleased to bring this report to Cabinet and recommend that we approve it. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you, Matt. We have 3 speakers here. First, Councillor Randall, then Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Beardsworth. Wendy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. As we know, this is round 4, and the worry is what's going to happen when this funding comes to an end. We know people are in crisis, ever increasing food costs are going up, fuel prices are still high, so things are likely to get worse. And I just wonder what's going to happen, or what is the plan going forward? You know, we need sustainable change, you know, and we need it to align it to our anti-poverty strategy. It states in 3.1 on page 40, note the proposed consultation and pilot to explore use of support vouchers to access food clubs and larders. Will there be time to run a consultation and run a support scheme before the fund ends? Housing support obviously is very welcome, but it's just sticking plaster. What is the plan going forward to make sure that we don't see hungry children again, especially over summer holidays? Heads have often told me that they are more worried about families where their income is just over that threshold, where they don't receive any benefits, and they notice that those children come back in the summer term much thinner than they started off in July. So it's often those, you know, and they're the difficult ones to capture. So I just wondered if there's any plan for that at all. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Some of that, Matt, you touched on, didn't you, about future plans? Did you want to comment at all any further, or?
Yeah, I recognise those challenges, Wendy, and that's all forms a part of the thinking. When the funding comes to an end, and I think part of the conversation we've been having is, I think we're going to assume that this is going to end at some point. We're very grateful to government for this funding, but the thinking is how long it can last. Potential change of governments, whatever might happen politically in the future. But I think one thing we want to look to try and do is which was a part of the second part of the anti-poverty strategy, about making things a bit more sustainable and dealing with things in a more medium, long-term sustainable way, is exactly how we go about doing that. So that's how we've got to change the thinking and change the sort of projects. You mentioned about the food larders. There's a couple of pilots going on at the moment to help and look at supporting people with those. I've been on a couple of visits with Stuart, and I've been astounded by the work of volunteers and the scope and the spread of reach, not just in, you know, the likes of Northampton. We went to Woodford House a few weeks ago, which supports about 26 villages, and people are saying the same sort of things that you're saying there. So we recognise the challenges that are out there, and what I'm pleased to say is we've got some really good people working on this in collaboration with all of our partners. So I hope we can do our best to try and address them.
Thanks, Matt. Next speaker is Councillor Humphreys. Rosie.
Thank you. Just very briefly, notwithstanding it's tragic really that you know, we live in a society that normalizes food banks. It's just part of the scenery, isn't it? But as regards food larders, I welcome the additional funding for that, and Stuart's explained what that's going to be used for. As a volunteer at Daventry Community Larder, they provide a incalculable benefit to so many local residents, not only discounted food and provision of fresh fruit and vegetables, etc., but there's a social benefit as well, which you can clearly see with isolated people, mental health difficulties, etc. So I think that's very positive that that's being further supported going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosie. And finally, Councillor Bidsworth. Sally.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the voluntary sector and the staff that deliver this service, because I think it's been a real wonderful thing that they've done. I mean, it's to reach out to as many people as they have. It's been excellent, and we're very lucky that we've got such excellent staff and the voluntary sector helping us to do this. The problem I've got is what's going to happen in the future. I mean, on this beautiful summer's day, we're all thinking, gosh, it's a bit warm out here. But I know I'm not looking forward to winter at all. I'm not looking forward to having to have the heating off when I want it on. And I'm sure there's a lot of people a lot worse off than me that are thinking, will I be able to have my central heating on? Will I have to feed my children? It's all those worries that people have got. And we've got to write or do something to the minister in charge to actually say that this is wonderful at the moment, but how long can it go on? And isn't it awful in this day and age that we've got children living in poverty in our town and county? It's just such a shame. And I admire all the people that do all the work, and I appreciate all the work that they do, the volunteers, everybody. And without them, we wouldn't have succeeded to make this such a good scheme. But I'm really, really concerned about the future, Chair. I really am. And I'm sure you are as well, because anybody who's got elderly relatives or young children will know the worry that they might be having. I mean, even today, you've got to have fans on in the house which use electricity. You know, it's just such a shame. So again, thank you to all of the people involved for all the work that they do. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. You've touched really on aspirations for the future. Matt, anything further to add? You've done that a couple of times now.
Yeah, just on the point around lobbying government, we did say as a part of the third aim of the anti-poverty strategy that we'd do that. So we're going to try and, put over the experiences of our residents through that. So we've agreed that we're going to do that. And just to agree with some of the points Sally made, we're not going to solve everything, but I think one of the roles of local authorities moving forward is how we support our communities a bit more in partnership with our excellent voluntary sector partners. Sally mentioned being cold in winter. One of the successes, if you like, out of the challenge that people are going through. We had 52,000 visits to our Warm Welcoming Spaces initiative between January and March, which is incredible. And that to me is 52,000 opportunities to talk to people, listen to their concerns. There was, I think, 80% of the people that filled in the form when they went to attended these places presented with mental health issues. So there's lots of opportunity there to capture, help and assist people, not just with being warm. So recognise the points made. Thank you.
Thank you. I hadn't heard those numbers before. That's really quite striking, isn't it? We'll think about those some more, of course. Adam, you wanted to make a quick comment?
Yeah, I think throughout the various iterations of the Household Support Fund, the impression I've got is that actually the flows of communication between local government and national government have only gotten better over the course of time, and I think that's reflected in the fact that we're now in a position where we've got 12-month funding for this scheme. So concerns about the forthcoming winter are to an extent allayed because that funding is in place until March of 2024. And I'm sure, given the track record to date, that government will be in listening mode as we approach the end of this funding stream. We'll obviously pass on our concerns not only to local MPs, but also to DLAC and other government departments when they ask for our feedback.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. If no further comments on that, okay, I think I'll draw your attention to the recommendations, as always, at section 3. Happy to confirm your agreement. Is that agreed? Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Matt. And that takes us on to item 9. This is with Fiona. Proposal to extend the age range at Croughton All Saints CE Primary School. Fiona, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. If you live in the village, it's Crowton, by the way, just to tell you.
And actually, if you've got the printed pack, it's before the other one, isn't it? It's after the other one. They're misprinted round. Over to you.
So we're talking about Crowton All Saints Primary School. This proposal is to lower the age range from 4 to 3. This will not only give opportunities for funded 3-year-olds to join the school, filling a much needed gap in provision for this age range. since the closure of a preschool locally, but also a help for the future sustainability of Crowton Primary School, as reception intake has seen a decline in the past years. This provision will be for 13 children. It will enable a smooth transition into school and support what is a good village school. We are finding that this is happening with our rural schools, and we do want to support them to stay alive and well, because they are a vital part to our villages. There is a drop in the birth rate, so we are seeing lower intakes into reception this year. I think this particular school had 25 last year and 11 this year, and this is happening throughout our district. So we will be supporting any school that wants to lower their age range, I think, to include younger children who then will go on to go to that school rather than go off to other areas. So I think it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to preserve schools in our villages, because they are often the heart of the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Speakers registered, just one is Councillor Beardsworth. Sally, over to you. Great. Okay, that's terrific. Thank you. In which case, any other queries or comments on this from members of the Cabinet? No. Okay, as always with this one, recommendations are at section 3. Can I just ask you to confirm your agreement to the recommendations? That agreed? Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 10. This is reference to a decision that was taken under urgency. Adam, this one was with you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. This obviously relates to a decision taken some time ago, but practicalities meant that it wasn't possible to bring the urgent decision to the attention of the April Cabinet meeting, and we didn't have a May Cabinet meeting, so here we are today. The backdrop to all of this is the amazing national effort to provide refuge and homes to people from Ukraine and Afghanistan. And whilst we were welcomed, I think the response to those two catastrophic situations, the question always loomed over us as to what would happen once that initial support came to an end. And this urgent decision gives us at least a partial answer to that question. When the option to take or not to take this funding was presented to both Councillor Smith and I. We both had input into this. I sort of I came to the conclusion that it's always rather silly not to take £3.7 million of government funding when it's on the table. But the way in which we go about implementing this scheme is really the devil in the detail. And so one option would have been to pass the money over to NPH and to ask them to obtain and refurbish the homes under the scheme. However, I had a very real concern that that would put undue pressure on the housing revenue account, and it would also cause capacity issues for NPH at a time when they've got many things to do. So it was the conclusion that we reached was that we would ask government if we could take a hybrid approach, which in the first instance means using our registered providers, the local housing associations, to deliver the bulk of the 30 homes that we're proposing to deliver under this scheme. They in turn would provide the match funding to go alongside the £3.7 million of government money, and NPH and the housing revenue account would effectively act as a fallback position should the registered providers be unable to deliver the full 30 homes that we're seeking to deliver under this scheme. As part of that, the Capital Assets Board will be regularly updated on progress. It's vital that we do maintain a long-term view of how the procurement is going through our registered providers, and whether there will be a demand made on the housing revenue account in future. What I would say is that through delivering the homes, we actually gain a fundamental advantage, whether or not we go through housing associations or NPH, because even if all of the homes are delivered by our registered providers, this council will still retain nomination rights to those homes if and when they're vacated by the families they're initially allocated to. So the government funding will effectively act as a subsidy for the provision of social housing or affordable housing in West Northamptonshire moving forward, no matter who ultimately delivers on this project. But I think we also need to be mindful of the fact that if we hadn't taken this money, if we'd refused the help of government, this authority would still have had a housing duty to the people coming out of the temporary housing or bridging hotels that they're currently housed in. So it would have created a huge pressure on our temporary accommodation bill, on other forms of support that we're required to provide by statute. And so I fully endorse the approach being taken. I think it will not only assist the people in need hugely in the short to medium term, but it will also assist the council in meeting a wider housing need in the long term.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. 4 speakers here. First of all, it's Councillor Bob Purser. Then we've got Councillor Randall, Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Beardsworth. Bob, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just welcome the fact this was dealt with as a matter of urgency. It is an urgent issue. I'm slightly concerned that there's probably a greater demand, or certainly is a greater demand that we'll be able to, this isn't the full answer, but it's certainly a good start and that's welcome. I just want to be assured that Futures and Grand Union have the capacity to deliver on this, and also that they've got the understanding of these communities to work with them, because they're people who've come through some pretty challenging life experiences in recent time, and they'll need to, there will need to be some sensitivity and some understanding of those experiences as people are moved into the house, into their housing. Understand the devil being in the detail. I think there are concerns about what are the longer term management and implications of this scheme. And we'll hopefully, as a council, that this will be reviewed to see what lessons can be learned as we go along, because this is an unusual scheme and we just need to make sure it doesn't cause us problems down the line. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob. Did you want to comment, or we take our other speakers then? Yeah, okay, thank you. You're okay, Wendy. Thank you very much. Rosie, did you want to comment further?
Thank you. Yes, obviously this is completely welcome and will assist those in need. But as Bob's already mentioned, it's an absolute drop in the ocean, it seems, given that I think it was reported at the last full council, there are 700 Ukrainian nationals in West Northampton, 227 Afghan nationals, so 30 homes, 5 of which will be allocated to the larger households, will a very small sticking plaster, really. Just operationally, I'd just be interested to know how, what the criteria will be, because these Afghan families have been in hotel accommodation for almost 2 years. There might be one argument that their need is greater for their own space. They must feel, however effective the support that WNC is offering them, they're practically institutionalized, aren't they? So I'd just be interested to know what criteria will be applied. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rosie. And then finally, Councillor Beardsworth. Sally, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously pleased, 30 houses not to be sneezed at. The only thing I do object to is this government's business of actually going to councils and saying, we've got this money, all bid for it. We all take time to bid for it. We were lucky. There were other councils that weren't. And it's totally wrong. If everybody needs help to get, if they've got refugees in their area, we have, and I'm sure Adam is aware of this, We have about 40 houses at the top of Welford Road, which are finished by the look of it, but cordoned off. They were built by Taylor French, and I think they've gone into liquidation. But we've got empty houses there, and they've been sitting there for month after month after month. Why can't we find out or deal with that and get those up and running? Because they were built as social housing, I believe. So I just don't understand why we can't. I'm delighted this is coming. It's coming. It will be a help. It won't be enough of a help, but we're pleased that it's happening. It's just a shame, as I say, we've got so many people still living in hotels, and it's not the best environment to bring a family up. And as soon as we can get them out, the better. So pleased with one hand, cross with the government for not allowing everybody to have a fair bite of the cherry. And secondly, that those houses that are sitting empty for months when we've got 3,000 people on the waiting list is criminal.
Adam, I don't know if you know the house of the Welford Road. It sounds like they've got to be bought from an administrator or a liquidator or something like that. You can't just part with a sort of bankrupt company's possessions, can you, Alan?
Slightly more complicated than that. Councillor Reemans has made several inquiries on this on behalf of local residents. It's a futures housing project. There have been severe problems with their subcontractor, who's tasked with carrying out the Section 278 duties to bring the road infrastructure up to scratch. Until the Section 278 agreement is fulfilled, the houses can't be delivered to by the developer to the housing association. So we've been working with Futures Housing for a number of months to try and assist in whatever way we can, fully aware, doing everything we can. We're as frustrated as you are, Sally, but turning back to the issue with the government funding and the scheme before us, one of the councillors who spoke, I think it was Councillor Purser, identified the issue around do our registered providers have knowledge of the cohort that they're going to be dealing with. Certainly Grand Union, who have an awful lot of activities in the former South Northants area, they participated in the Syrian resettlement scheme, so they have some experience in dealing with vulnerable cohorts, shall I say. Also, this isn't a cut and run exercise. Our communities team will continue to be on hand to support people who have sought refuge in West Northamptonshire. I'd add as well that the 30 homes that we're seeking to deliver through this scheme are in addition to the 10 that we previously pledged to deliver. I completely acknowledge that it seems a small number in comparison to the number of people who have been supported via the two different schemes, or the three different schemes, in fact. But our experience is that not all of those people will remain in West Northamptonshire. Particularly the Afghans have seemed to move to different parts of the country on a fairly consistently. It remains to be seen what the response of the Ukrainian nationals will be as time goes on. We all hope and pray for a swift conclusion to the conflict in Ukraine, and for those people who wish to return to their home to be able to do so. But until such a point, we'll do everything in our power to assist them. And I think that covers the majority of the points raised.
Yeah.
If it's a highways issue, we're the highways authority. If it's a road we've got a great big dumping road coming about 100 yards down the road with all the equipment on it, the new single lane road, and this is just 100 yards up the road. Why can't we supply so we can release the houses? It just
there are echoes of people turning up at front doors offering to re-tarmac the drive because of the development on the M1, but they're entirely separate issues, I'm afraid, Sally. And Section 27, this is a major Section 278 agreement because of the requirements around the road within the housing estate. We as both the Highways Authority and the local authority generally, we have a financial exposure and a legal exposure in the case of Section 278 agreements. If we were to go in there and carry out these works ourselves, that would cost an awful lot of money. The developer, was obliged to carry out those works as part of the planning permission given to build the houses. It's right that we continue to hold developers to account, whether they're building affordable housing or general market housing. In other cases, I know that Stuart and his team have intervened directly with developers to get slightly more simple Section 278 disputes resolved in very short order. There were a couple of others ongoing in different parts of the district. This is certainly the most complex, but it's not been overlooked. But we're working with Futures and with the subcontractors, and I look forward to people moving into the houses as soon as they can.
And a total of around 380 Afghan resettlers have gone through our hotels just in West Northants, haven't they, David? But there is urgency now. David and I met with the Veterans Minister today, who's bringing urgency to this, didn't he? Do you want to update a little on that, David?
Well, we've had the delight to spend the afternoon with Johnny Mercer, and he discussed with our Afghan guests some of the challenges they've got. But as Jonathan says, we've seen around 380 people go through our bridging hotels. So that's around about 70% of all the arrivals that we've had over the project. So there is movement. And of course, this is something that's, they're moving on to areas across the whole of the UK. So I'm encouraged by this afternoon's meeting, I would say, with the Minister. He's really getting some oomph into this because after all, these are veterans.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Any further comments at all on that? No. Okay. In which case, recommendations, as always, are at section 3. Just read to note the decision is taken. Can I ask you to confirm your agreement to that recommendation? Is that agreed? Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. That takes us on to item 11. This one was with Matt, procurement of implementation of adult social care case management system. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And the first thing I'll do is say this is another excellent report, and the author is Karen Ems, who's sitting at the back there. And when we talk about procuring case management systems, it sounds quite a dry transactional thing that we do through Cabinet. But if you talk to Karen about this, it's full of opportunity and transformational opportunities, not only for us and how we work culturally as an organisation, but how we're getting better outcomes for people. So I won't do as good a job as Karen would do, but if any members or anybody has any questions, speak to Karen about it, because Karen is brilliant on this and full of all the insight and data and opportunity that changing this will bring. So we need to replace our main system due to the current contract running out in March 2025, and we've already extended it a couple of times. And this report is seeking approval to proceed with the replacement of the case management system, and the new system will give us the opportunity to modernise and streamline process and allow officers to work much more flexibly. The new system will allow residents and their carers to access social care records electronically, giving greater choice and control, which is a huge step forward. And the new system can offer an opportunity to interface with other systems, enabling the sharing of information with partner and providers to improve service delivery. The finances are described in a couple of tables within the report. And we're basically being asked if we can proceed with the replacement of the current system. I've got nothing more to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. That's great. With 2 speakers, Councillor Randall, then Councillor Beardsworth. Wendy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we welcome this report and understand that a good IT system is vital, and we desperately need a modern model. This should improve efficiency, and residents should then receive a well-managed service. The current contract ends March 25. What I want to ask is how confident we are that the new system will be ready to go by then, and all teething problems would have been ironed out prior to April 25. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Wendy, did you want to respond at this point, or should we bring our second speaker in? Okay, sure. Thank you.
Just to confirm, we have to get that system in by the end of the contract date. The expectation is that we actually have it up and running by January, and that'll be the kind of first wave, which will see the migration of our data to the new system, and our practitioners starting to take it forward. Some of the fancy innovative stuff will come in phase 2, which will probably be around September next 25, where we'll start to switch on the portals, but we have to deliver this within timeframes.
Thanks, Stuart. And then finally on this one, Councillor Beardsworth. Sally.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome this report. Welcome the putting in of the new system. I think it'll be an advantage not only for the staff, but for the service users. And it will help a lot with rural areas as well, because town people can walk to council chambers. It's much, much harder for people in rural areas. So I'm very pleased with this is going ahead. And I hope it's as successful as it sounds on paper. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sally. Any further comments from the cabinet? No. Okay. In which case, the recommendations, quite an extensive list of recommendations, including a delegation to follow this through. They're all at section 3. Could I ask you to confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Thank you. Takes us on to item 12. This one's also with UMAT, reablement commissioning intentions. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader. So the purpose of this report is to outline the adult social care intentions to commission and procure contractual arrangements for a sustainable and affordable supply of care quality commission registered reablement home care service for people aged 65 and over, and people with a physical disability, and for individuals with a diagnosed mental health condition. We're seeking Cabinet to have delegated authority to tender, procure and award a new framework to commence in October of this current year. The Council currently accesses a supply of CQC registered reablement home care services via a short-term contract with a single provider, and this contract will initially be commissioned during the winter pressure period. Sorry, this contract was initially commissioned during the winter pressure period at the end of 2022 as a trial of externally provided services to supplement in-house services where we had struggled to recruit the required capacity. The existing contracts due to expire mid-October 2023, and the Council proposes issuing a competitive open tender to appoint a long-term provider of reablement, having proven the value and benefits of the arrangements and capacity and flexibility this gives us. A recommissioning project is underway to plan, design and procure a new long-term contract for reablement home care, which meets the needs of individuals and recognises the post-COVID market conditions, as well as changes to national strategies and priorities like Home First and a greater focus on returning people to their normal place of residence post-hospital stays and helping them stay at home and independent for longer following a fall or a crisis. The project has undertaken substantial engagement and design work during the past few months, seeking the views and input of key stakeholders. This will help shape the model for future contract requirements with an outcome-based delivery model, which will be the basis for procuring new arrangements for delivery. At 6.1, it gives a bit of a snapshot taken in April this year, which mentions that we're currently providing about 760 hours per week to 31 residents through the externally provided services we currently have, and the total spend on external reablement home care is circa £18,000 per week or £936,000 per annum. This in addition to 500 hours per week to 50 residents. Sorry. This in addition to 500 hours per week to 50 residents from the in-house service at a cost of £31,000 per week, or £1,600,000 per annum. So that's basically the increase. The recommendations are outlined in section 3 of the report, and I commend the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Matt, 2 speakers, Councillor Randall, Councillor Bearsworth. Wendy. You're okay. Sally, any comments on this one?
Just a few comments, Chair. I have already spoke to the director today about this. I see no problem in going ahead with this because we've got an aging population, but people are living longer but healthier. Most people are these days, even into their 80s and 90s, still lead active lives. And very few people want to go into a nursing home these days unless it's absolutely essential. So to have home care is the best thing for people to stay in their own home as long as they possibly can and enjoy that facility, staying in their neighborhood with their friends around them. So I think this is a good idea to actually increase this. we did look at in-house, I did discuss that, but it is very difficult and the staffing levels could be quite onerous for us. So yes, I agree with this to go ahead and hopefully we'll get some extra people in to look after people and it won't cost us quite so much. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Sally. That's great. Any further comments or at all on this one? No, in which case the recommendations as always are at section 3. Can I actually confirm your agreement to those recommendations? Thank you very much. That takes us on to item 13. Disposal of land at London Road. I think it's more relevant expression rather than the whole of London Road. This one's with you, Malcolm. Over to you.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, this is an interesting one. It's as much as anything, a bit of a cleanup operation on our part. We've got about 1.8 acres and on the London Road of Daventry. Anybody that knows the area will know what I'm referring to. If you don't know Daventry, it's a bit more difficult. And there's a number of other owners of land. And the idea being is that we get together and sell it as a package. Our piece of land is pretty low grade agricultural land, as it says in the report, and not worth a lot in itself, but it's worth a lot more if it's combined with the others, and that will bring in, we think, we anticipate about 32 million for the whole site, of which our share by the equalization method, which means that it's all down to area, because not necessarily what goes on it. We'd get about 1.25, 1.28 to be precise. Now the intention is to market it, and if we don't get that sort of level of response, then we'll just sit tight for better market conditions. So that's what this report's about, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 2 speakers, Councillor Randall, Councillor Beardsworth. Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. The entrance to Daventry along that A45, we already hit a scrapyard and a disused hotel, and it's an eyesore. So I'm really concerned that we're now going to be hitting warehousing as well. It says that units are up to 10,000 square metres, but I don't know how big 10,000 square metres is. So it's really hard to visualise what that might look like. I'm really concerned about the climate impact. And it states in here that it is likely to have a climate impact, which we would expect. However, whilst the council has goals to secure net zero, it is not practical to prevent all development. We know that, but there can still be some really good development. And there was recently a warehouse in Daventry that is going to use solar panels on its roof, collect the rainwater for flushing toilets, etc. So if we do go ahead and we do end up with buildings like that, what can we do to make sure that they are as good as they can be? So yeah, it's just going to be, I know that people in Daventry are not going to like that. The look of that is just going to be, I can just see it's going to be awful. And it also says about employment. We've already got loads of warehouses that actually bus people in from Birmingham because there are not enough people within the town to work within the town. So again, what sort of impact have we done, assessment have we done to prove that these jobs are needed for local people? And also I'm concerned that we are just surrounded by warehousing in low cost jobs, but housing that nobody can afford. And we have got a massive sofa surface everywhere. So if you're going to have low paid jobs, you need low cost housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Wendy. We'll come back to your points, I think. Sally, did you want to comment? You're okay. Thank you very much. You agree to some extent with the sentiment. There's probably a planning issue or an economic development issue there at all. Do you want to make some comments on that, Stuart? Can you?
Yeah, the site has been allocated in the local plan, so therefore it follows the local plan allocation. So there has been previous consultation in regard to the planning of the site, so it does align to that. All we're doing at the moment is package, well, as Malcolm described, packaging the land for sale and promotion. We don't know yet what the answer will be to that, but that will be subject to future planning applications, and obviously that will be consulted on and go through due process as any development would. So I think there are safeguards in there, but the fact it is already allocated in the local plan, I think the expectation is probably there that that's the use of the site.
Yeah. So that's just a sort of a commercial or industrial allocation without any talk of heights of buildings or anything at this stage, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any further comments at all on this one? No. Okay. In which case the recommendations as always is section 3. Can I ask you just to confirm your agreement? Is that agreed? Great. Thank you very much indeed. Now we've one more item and we've a choice on this. We don't like to go into private unless it's absolutely necessary. We might avoid that if people are comfortable with a brief explanation of the project. And therefore we're holding the whole meeting in public. Alternatively, of course, councillors have the right to see the figures and indeed to ask questions and debate them. So I'll ask the question to see whether anybody wants to go into detail on the detail that you've seen on the pink papers. We're extremely happy to do that. Or whether you're happy just to hear an introduction of the report, which might mean that everybody is reasonably happy. We do have speakers registered with councillors Purser, Holland, Delamere and Beardsworth. Shall we start with that? Shall we just start with that initially then? A quick introduction. If at any point anybody wants to refer to the pink papers, we'll then pause. We'll suspend the streaming and we'll go into private session. Does that come? Yeah, great. Dan, do you want to start, Dan? I think Malcolm may have some comments on this one too.
Yeah, I think Malcolm may have some comments on numbers, but I'll keep them broad. And then if we need to talk particular numbers, we'll go into it. Yeah, so we'll just introduce it. So, I mean, this is a paper that's fundamentally an update on the paper from December 2021. We've had slight changes, obviously, in COVID markets, things like that, which have had an impact on this. But the team of the interesting parts, I think, are probably 4.1.8, where the team have explained how they have value engineered the project to be able to ensure that the levels of cost and profit that we were getting over the 40-year period have remained the same. So we see the developer has reduced their amount of profit from 12% down to 10%. And the other big change is that the council are now will be operating the car parks. We've eliminated the cost of an operator running the car park. And that's the brief introduction, Chair. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dan. Malcolm, did you want to add any general details without the specifics?
No, Dan's covered it there. I've got numbers, so I don't think, but the numbers are broad. The numbers are broadly awash. So I'm personally quite happy to leave it as Dan just explained, unless anybody does want me to go through the numbers.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Let's take our speakers then, first of which is Councillor Purser. Bob? Yes, okay, thanks. Keith, over to you. You do want to refer to them? Okay, that's fine. Before we go into private, Sally, did you want to make your comments on this or we're going to private? Go into private first. Yep, okay, right. That's great. Right. So just ask the committee to resolve if they could. We will only do this because there'll be some commercial sensitivity that could undermine the value to the public purse. So the committee's asked resolved under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that if the public were present, it would be likely that exempt information under part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act of the descriptions against each item would be disclosed.